Stop what you're doing for a moment, because what I'm about to explain is not speculation, not rumor, and not a loose interpretation of headlines. At 7:43 a.m. this morning, 3 senior Republican senators entered Mitch McConnell's office for what was scheduled to be a standard leadership check-in. 47 minutes later, they exited. Within 2 hours, Washington was in open political turmoil, facing the most serious internal Republican rupture since the Watergate era. This has nothing to do with policy nuance. This is senior Republican leadership reaching the conclusion that Donald Trump is no longer governable. And the trigger for that conclusion is not what most people expect. If you care about what happens next, subscribe now and turn on notifications. The next 72 hours will determine whether the Republican Party remains intact or fractures in a way that cannot be repaired. Here's what has not yet been widely reported, and what I have confirmed through 3 independent sources inside the Senate Republican Conference. At 2:17 a.m. early Wednesday morning, Donald Trump placed a direct call to the Senate Majority Leader. During that call, he demanded an immediate vote on legislation he referred to as the Emergency Powers Expansion Act. He issued an ultimatum: pass it by Friday, or he would personally support primary challenges against every non-compliant Republican senator. He explicitly threatened to campaign against incumbents in their own states. Then, at approximately 6:30 a.m., leaked audio began circulating among senior Republicans. In the recording, Trump is heard privately stating, "I don't need the Senate. These people work for me." That recording moved rapidly through leadership circles. The reaction was not fear, it was anger. By 7:43 a.m., an emergency meeting was called. McConnell, John Thune, John Barrasso, and John Cornyn met behind closed doors for 47 minutes. What they decided in that room became the most serious internal challenge to Trump's authority ever launched by his own party. To understand why this moment matters, you have to understand how Trump has controlled Senate Republicans for nearly 8 years. It was never about ideology. It wasn't even about legislation. It was about fear, deployed efficiently and consistently. Every Republican senator knows the case studies. In 2020, Mitt Romney voted to convict Trump during impeachment. The response was swift. Romney was labeled a traitor, censured by his state party, isolated and politically marginalized. The lesson was unmistakable. Defiance has consequences. In 2021, Bill Cassidy voted to convict in the second impeachment. He attempted reconciliation, publicly humiliated himself, voted with Trump repeatedly, and still faced a primary challenger once his usefulness faded. The lesson evolved. Loyalty does not guarantee safety. It only postpones punishment. Then in 2023, Kevin McCarthy negotiated a debt ceiling compromise. Trump opposed it privately. Within weeks, McCarthy was removed as Speaker. The message crystallized. Trump could destroy anyone, at any time, for any reason. That is how authoritarian leverage functions. You don't punish everyone. You punish a few and let fear do the rest. For 8 years, that fear worked. Senators watched colleagues fall and concluded compliance was safer than resistance. But Trump miscalculated one thing. Fear only works until people realize the threat never ends. That realization arrived this week because 3 forces converged. First, the electoral math changed. The 2026 Senate map is brutal for Republicans. 23 GOP seats versus 11 Democratic seats. Internal polling now shows Trump alignment is a liability. In Montana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, Republican candidates lose 6 to 8 points when directly associated with Trump. One senator summarized it bluntly: "I can defend conservatism, I can't defend chaos." Second, the Greenland crisis crossed a red line. NATO allies are alarmed. Defense officials are furious. A retired 4-star admiral described the rhetoric as instability, masquerading as strategy. Senators on armed services understand that threatening allied territory is not negotiation. It's reckless destabilization. Third, legal pressure is accelerating. Courts are denying delays. Trial schedules are solidifying. A senior Republican attorney privately warned colleagues that the party is staring at the possibility of nominating someone facing active federal trials during an election year. When electoral danger, foreign policy recklessness, and legal exposure converge, the calculus changes. Defending Trump stops being uncomfortable and starts being suicidal. According to two sources briefed on the meeting, this is what unfolded in McConnell's office. McConnell opened the meeting by playing the leaked audio, the full 3-minute clip, twice. No one spoke. One source described the silence as oppressive. Everyone understood this wasn't a president venting frustration. It was a president declaring the Senate irrelevant. John Thune broke first. He said they could not defend the Greenland rhetoric, the emergency powers demand, or the threats against their own members. He said voters were exhausted and explanations were failing. Barrasso pushed back, visibly conflicted. He warned that opposing Trump would invite retaliation. He cited Romney, Cassidy, Cheney, examples of defiance punished. He asked what made this different. McConnell leaned forward and delivered the line that changed everything. He said it was different because Trump would destroy them regardless. The only remaining choice was whether they would fall defending Trump or defending the Senate. Cornyn followed with polling from Texas. Down 4 points, every loss tied to Trump-driven chaos. Voters wanted stability, not senators explaining threats against Greenland. McConnell then laid out a plan, not symbolic, but structural. A joint letter to the White House refusing to advance emergency powers expansion, a public announcement that leadership would not campaign with Trump unless foreign policy rhetoric changed, a commitment that if Trump primaried incumbents, leadership would defend them with the full NRSC war chest. Then McConnell demanded answers immediately. Thune said yes. Cornyn said yes. Barrasso hesitated. 30 seconds of silence described as agonizing, then said yes. 4 votes. And with that, the framework holding the party together began to fracture. What followed moved rapidly. At 9:15 a.m., McConnell called 15 senior Republican senators. The message was simple. This is happening. Are you in? Romney, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski committed immediately. Expected. Then came the shock. Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio. Graham's break was seismic. A source close to him said he told colleagues he would not defend threats against Allied territory, the dismantling of Senate authority, or branding dissenters as traitors. There is a line, he reportedly said, and it was crossed. By 10:47 a.m., the letter was drafted, 5 pages of constitutional and legal language. The core sentence stated they could no longer enable conduct that undermined constitutional order or the Senate's institutional authority. By noon, 12 signatures were secured. At 11:30 a.m., Trump was informed. His response, according to leaked staff messages, all caps, traitors. Trump immediately began calling allies. At 12:15 p.m., he called Graham. The call lasted under 2 minutes. Trump said, "You're dead to me." Graham replied, "Then I'm dead," and hung up. Trump called Rubio, threatening destruction. Rubio reportedly responded, "You're doing that yourself." Trump called McConnell 3 times. No answer. By early afternoon, the split was visible. House Republicans issued full-throated support for Trump. Senate leadership said nothing. By mid-afternoon, media outlets reported Senate leadership refusal to support emergency powers expansion. At 3:15 p.m., the letter leaked intentionally. Then came the contingency plans. Stage 1. If Trump attacks publicly, 5 more senators issue statements, and leadership holds a press conference reaffirming constitutional duty. Probability, 80%. Stage 2. If primaries are launched, $50 million is deployed to defend incumbents. Corporate donors mobilized. Probability, 60%. Stage 3. If escalation continues, a bipartisan resolution limiting emergency powers, potentially including censure. Probability, 30%. Meanwhile, Senate Democrats chose restraint. Schumer opted not to exploit the chaos publicly, allowing Republicans to own the split. Quiet offers of cooperation followed. Trump escalated. Truth Social exploded. Primary challenges launched. Conservative media fractured. Donors moved. Staff revolted. International allies issued rebukes. By Thursday morning, internal polling leaked. Trump endorsement cost 6 points in swing states. Then came the staff letter. 42 Republican Senate aides refusing to defend the indefensible. Business groups followed. NATO followed. Trump announced a rally in Graham's state. Capitol security increased. McConnell responded, The Senate does not work for any individual. Behind the scenes, moderate Democrats committed to supporting limits on emergency powers. The votes now exist. Trump may not realize it yet, but the revolt has already succeeded. This is what the collapse of authoritarian control looks like. Fear stops working. Collective action breaks isolation. Institutions reclaim authority they voluntarily surrendered. What happens next has three paths: backing down, stalemate, full rupture. Right now, the trajectory favors rupture. This is not about Greenland, it's about control. Trump demanded total obedience, and the Senate said no, that no changes everything. Stay alert.